Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulphur Blade, and I am here with a video that's not the political process video game. No, this is actually about stuff that's going on in the news right now, in particular in relations to COVID-19 specifically. There seems to be a new push to, well, use COVID-19 one more time as a fear-mongering tool by the mainstream media. I'm assuming a way to try to distract from the voter fraud that's been going on around the country and try to put fear back into the minds of the people to remind them that we need Joe Biden for the shutdowns, to lock down the country, to save us all from the evil orange man who's going to let us all die to COVID. Well, now there's a new topic. Can you get COVID twice? See, 11 million people in the United States have had COVID already, and Rand Paul evidently made the mistake of saying that they should go out and celebrate. And of course, the mainstream media has jumped all over that, as well as blue check marks on Twitter and, the usual crowd. Here we have 11 million people in our country who have already had COVID. We should tell them to celebrate. We should tell them to throw away their masks, go to restaurants, and live again, because these people are now immune. That's what Rand Paul, Senator, and Doctor said. And now they're lambasting him because he should know better as a doctor than to say something so blatantly false. That's the accusation here, is that Rand Paul is spreading misinformation. Well, is it misinformation? Well, study confirms it's possible to catch COVID twice, according to some WebMD study. Now, if you go through this and you read, it's all usual stuff, but good news. That seems to be true in the case of the very first man to have this happen to him in Hong Kong. When doctors tested his blood to look for antibodies to the virus, they didn't find any. Odd. That could mean that he either had a very weak immune response to the virus the first time around, or that the antibodies he made during his first infection diminished over time. But during his second infection, he quickly developed more antibodies, suggesting that the second infection acted a little bit like a booster to fire up his immune system. That's probably the reason he didn't have any symptoms the second times too. So let's be clear here. This particular man, who was identified as having coronavirus twice, who didn't actually have life-threatening COVID, he wasn't bedridden, he wasn't on a respirator, he wasn't dying. In both instances, he had asymptomatic COVID-19, where it was just another day for him. If he hadn't been tested, he would have never known he had it. And why was he tested so often? Because this is a man with a failing immune system. That's right, a man with a failing immune system in Hong Kong supposedly caught COVID twice and lived both times. But we need to be scared of the COVID virus. But let's hear some more here. I'm gonna let Steven Crowder have his way of explaining this to you.
He would say that for your viewers out there, to correct misinformation, there is no evidence that if you've been infected with COVID-19 that you're immune from reinfection for any period of time.
Well, you know what? Thank you. I will correct misinformation. So there are, I know some of you guys may know because you read the show map, but bear with me. Some of you have not. So there are, at the time of this comment from Rand Paul, 52 million, about 250,000 cases of COVID. Okay?
A lot.
Yeah. 53,250,000, okay? Now, let me ask you this. How many would you guess? So out of those, because they're saying there's no science, this has been going on since January.
Yeah, sure.
Some people have said since before January, right? How many would you guess have been reinfected with COVID? So we have a sample of 53 million. Let's round it, just call it 53 million. So for us to definitively be able to say that at least for a year or so, you cannot recontract COVID, you would think that it would have to be a very small number of people who've contracted. They're saying you cannot make that claim. We need to fact check that misinformation. How many people who have caught COVID, of the 53 million cases, do you think have recontracted COVID?
Like half of them.
3.
Yeah, but I would think it would.
You're a comedian. You know, you should know to build.
You got to build.
I'm sorry. Off at the pass.
Yeah,
Most people said 3. 4. You're right. 4.
Are you serious?
Really close.
4.
COVID-19 reinfection. Can you get coronavirus twice? What does reinfection mean? So far, there's been 4 documented cases of COVID-19 reinfection in the world. In the world! Now, let's be fair here. These are actual documented cases. These are cases that a doctor has gone in and certified, yep, you got it. And the doctor went in and said, yep, you had it before. So these were expert diagnosed COVID-19 infections, or supposedly expert diagnosed COVID-19 infections. It is possible for experts to make mistakes and misdiagnose something. It's rather rare. Like, for example, all these COVID-19 tests that we give out, where they shove the big nasal swab up your nose, or the ones that don't shove nasal swabs up your nose, they have a particular factor of not being completely accurate. They're not 100% accurate, right? There is some percentage that are false positives or false negatives, so on and so forth. Well, is it feasibly likely that 4 of these cases could have been the flu, the cold, something that looks very similar to COVID, but isn't, and they were simply misdiagnosed the first time, or misdiagnosed the second time? I think that's far more likely than that these 4 people actually were diagnosed twice. But of 53 million people, only 4. So, scientifically speaking, I think Dr. Rand Paul's advice to the 11 million people to go live their lives and stop living their lives in fear is pretty darn good advice. Honestly, I think that's good advice even if you haven't gotten COVID. Again, the Democrats want us to live our life in fear over a pandemic that is not the bubonic plague. That is not the Black Death. That is not going to kill everyone it touches. We are not burning people in the streets. There is a 0.002 mortality rate. That's right. 99.89% of people live that contract this damn thing. And that's of people like over 50. Under 50, it's like 99.99. It's something insane. But it's ridiculous how scared we are over this fake issue. And that's because the mainstream media keeps pushing it down our throats, forcing it upon us. Anyway, but there's more. There should be more good news, right? Moderna comes out and says preliminary trials of data for our vaccines show that it's 94% effective. Remember, Pfizer just released its data on its vaccine saying it's 90% effective, and they're about ready to start rolling it out. And now Moderna comes along and says, hey, we're almost done too, and ours is 94% effective. But we need to shut the world down because COVID bad. We're all going to die. We're all doomed. Hide indoors. Don't do anything. Lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Even though the touted World Health Organization has specifically said lockdowns don't do anything, don't lock down. The World Health Organization has repeatedly told countries not to lock down, that lockdowns are a bad idea and they don't do anything to stop it. But, you know, we're the U.S. We'll do whatever the Democrats want us to do, right? Yes, that's the world we live in. Anyway, this is this nice little tidbit of coronavirus information I bring to you today. I am James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all. Peace.